Hello, Rimfire friends. I hope everybody's doing well. Today is February 18th, 2025, I think. Yeah, let's call it that. Just wanted to kind of film a quick video and talk about something that came up recently, a question that I had received from somebody, and I thought I would make a quick video and address it as best as I could. So this person asked me a question, was an owner of a CZ457, and said, hey, listen, I noticed that your Anschutz bolt is super smooth. My 457 is not smooth at all. What can I do to improve it, if anything, in terms of the chambering and the bolt manipulation? What can I do? So I thought I would kind of touch on it a little bit and give you my 2 cents. Now, the person had asked kind of some in-depth questions. Is there something physical I can do? Is there something I'm doing wrong? Or is there a break-in period? Should I, break out the sandpaper? What should I do? So I want to address those issues real quick. First of all, is your rifle indicative of a smooth action? Are you asking too much? Are you expecting too much from your platform that you have chosen? So smoothness of a rifle has a lot to do with a few very significant things that go on within the bolt. It can be something as simple as your cocking ramp and that sort of thing. But before I dive into that too much, the first thing I'm going to say is your ammo choice correct for your rifle? If you have a match chamber and you have non-match ammo, the driving band might be way off, and you might have, tough bolt close, and you might, not have a smooth action because that bolt is a little bit tougher to close as it drives that non-match ammo or forces it into the chamber rather. Same thing can happen too in reverse. If you have a sloppy chamber, you'll see it a lot on Savages, especially the older ones from like the 80s, early 90s, where you'll get the brass kind of like fire forming or swelling within the chamber. And I have lots of personal experience with that. It doesn't happen with the new ones that I've experienced, but in the older ones. And so when you went to withdraw the round, you would get some kind of stiffness. So that can be a factor too. So the ammo is kind of indicative sometime of rough bolt travel or sticky or whatever. And sometimes just switching brands to a more premium ammunition, you will find that. Like I shoot a lot of CCI standard velocity, and like I know I couldn't chamber it in certain rifles that I've had over the years. And the current 1710 Anschutz 1710 that I use now definitely is a tougher bolt close with CCI standard than a match ammo. I know this. It is what it is. It would definitely be even smoother without it. So keep that in mind. Check your ammo first. Sometimes the rifle itself is the problem, and I spoke about Mark II and its sloppy chamber. I will also speak about Mark IIs, are great rifles, but they're budget. And their bolt is not a long-lasting bolt, in my opinion. And so you have a golden age for a Savage that shoots before headspace opens up, and that's because it locks up on the bolt handle in a mild steel receiver, mild steel bolt handle, and eventually surfaces wear to the point where you open up your headspace. It's very difficult to shim one of those, although it is possible, but not a long-term solution. So you go through a golden age for a Savage, and then accuracy wanes in my experience. During that period, sometimes the cocking pawl itself on the cocking ramp at the rear of the bolt, that's a hardened steel pin, and it'll wear in a strange fashion, and again, you'll have issues. One of the reasons that the Mark II is either you'll get a good example or a bad example is for that poor design. So there's not too much you can do in terms of a Savage Mark II, because it's just a matter of time where it wears past the point of being accurate anyway, in my experience. So we'll leave that there. Now you got the Brunos, the 452s, the 455s, CZs, and the 457s. The Bruno to the 455 used an almost identical bolt, cocking ramp. They're genius design, near perfect for a rimfire in my opinion. And they have a 90-degree lift. 90-degree lift is very annoying for scopes, but it also, it helps in terms of bolt cocking and function in my opinion. And coupled with a reasonably decent sized bolt handle, you have enough leverage to operate the bolt. So I wouldn't change a thing on one of those. I know on some of them I've mentioned that I think I deleted the video on a Bruno where there's a ball bearing detent lockup, so you don't get bolt jump, and I played with that. And I have a couple little tricks that I've used over the years on Brunos and CZs to slick up the action. I won't talk about them too much here because they're at a higher level than the average person should attempt, because you can overdo it very quickly, and then your gun has decades more wear on it than it should. Speaking of wear, I'll touch on that. Wear on a rifle happens from use, and that's the only way it should happen. If you're going to force wear, which I'll talk about after, it's a slippery slope. So regardless of the rifle that you're shooting, you should make sure that you've put the miles into it to start to break it in. So like I had asked this fellow, how many rounds have you shot through it? Oh, it was, approaching 2,000 rounds. So that's ample time for a CZ to be broken in. Although my opinion on 457s isn't the greatest, from my own experience. It should be, you're going to basically have a rifle that's broken in by that point. And so that bolt won't get much better than it is right there, in my opinion. So without some work. Okay, so we talked about CZs and Brunos and Savages. Then you get into the higher cost rifles. I'm not going to talk too much about the 700 platform, but regardless, when you start to pay money for something, you expect all of the candy in the box, so to speak. So if you have an Anshet 64 action, which is an expensive rifle, in some of the decorations that they have, it's nowhere near as smooth a bolt function, nowhere near as a 54 action at sometimes double the price. But 64 is not the smoothest of actions, in my opinion. Is it a long wearing action? Yes. Does it have an Anshet's barrel? Yes, all that good stuff. But just because it's an Anshet doesn't necessarily mean that it's terribly smooth. Some 64s are better than others, but you get what you pay for. When you step up to the 54, it's a Cadillac and it's incredibly smooth. I'll talk too also that you might have an obscure rifle like, let's say, a Ruger 7722. Those were made to a very high standard, just like the Browning A bolts and that sort of thing. And they will have a wonderfully smooth bolt function. They were designed properly. They're based on old timeless designs, and so they will be wonderful. But you don't counter them very often. So we're talking about off the shelf, something like a CZ47 or a TCAM. You're going to buy that, you're going to shoot it out of the box, and it'll improve, round by round until you feel that it's better. And I think most modern rifles are made to a high standard where you won't have an issue or you will have an issue. I know, I don't know, some of you might remember that Howa 1100, model 1100 that I bought as a project and I very quickly dumped, because one of the problems with it was it had one of the worst, steepest cocking angle bolt manipulations I've ever experienced in a rimfire. I don't know if you guys remember, but I do. I could lift the rifle up by the closed bolt and it wouldn't open. That's how stiff it was. I would say the opening effort on that bolt, or the cocking effort, was in excess of 10 pounds. It was horrible. And I did play with that, not too much, because it was going to go to a new owner. And so I didn't want to, mess around with it too much, because this is the part I wanted to talk about. There are all sorts of ways that you can physically alter the wear on a rifle. Some are very obvious, like sandpaper and emery cloth and sharpening stones I've ever heard of. And some are more advanced, like abrasive paste, valve lapping grinding compound of different grits. I've even made my own with Jeweler's Rouge and machine oil for finer abrasives. And you apply those to specific places of a bolt, and you manipulate the bolt, fire some rounds, and you will prematurely wear and hopefully break in your rifle. That's an advanced technique, and you run the risk, if you don't have the experience, to add a decade or more of wear to your rifle. And in some cases, you might ruin a surface and be very sorry that you did. And the reason that is some rifles, mostly the older ones, but some rifles have kind of like a case or surface hardening technique where only the surface of the metal, not the whole part, is fully hardened. And if you manipulate it or sand or grind or through a lifetime of wear, you'll wear through that hardened steel surface, and very quickly you're into the mild steel, and it will wear very quickly. You'll see it more on trigger parts, but they're sometimes a mystery of where that is in a rifle. And like on the 457s, they're nitride coated. Like you can wear that off, right? And then you don't have any nitride coating, which is designed to be all sorts of fun stuff. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to do something and you're going to go past the point of no return, you're going to add years to your rifle in terms of wear, and I wouldn't recommend it. It's also important too for, like, you can buy yourself like a Ford 1940s, 50s Bruno that's existed all its life, and it might have had a lot of miles on it, and it still functions perfectly because it was designed right. But you take something like a Savage Mark II, and like, I'm not knocking on a Mark II because I love the platform, but they literally are gas tube pipe constructions, right? They are so soft and sloppy, and so you add an abrasive paste to the bolt of a Mark II, you are going to get sloppy tolerances and bolt chatter back and forth. Like I've seen on some modern Tikas, they're very loose tolerances. It's very slick, but it literally rattles back and forth. Functions fine, and it is what it is. But if you added an abrasive paste to that and trying to get a, a caulking lift or better engagement on the headspace, I don't know, you would very quickly get bolt bind side to side, which is a real thing. It's difficult for me to explain that in kind of a way that might make sense to you guys and might not. So I think the best way is for me to show you that on my 1710 bolt, what a wear pattern looks like and why a wear pattern is not always indicative of just sanding this and buffing it and away you go. Because the bolt in a rifle doesn't operate in a way that you would just buff the whole thing and polish the whole thing and slap it back together. Because a bolt in the channel manipulates like this and like this because when you put the bolt forward, it doesn't go straight. You got a handle out here, and so as you push it forward, you cant it this way in the channel. When you pull it open, the same thing happens. And then it's rotating only like this. So it has a distinct wear pattern. And if you polish it, in a linear fashion, for instance, you will polish surfaces away that don't need to be and have nothing to do with the smoothness of the rifle. So you'll polish it, you'll put it in, and some of you have probably done that. You sanded your bolt down, cleaned it all up with some, flits or something, and you put it in, and it doesn't feel smooth because now it doesn't have the same wear pattern that it had before that almost guides it through all the surfaces that it touches. You've changed all that, and then it takes, a couple dozen, 50 rounds before that pattern starts coming back. Problem is that you've worn down the whole bolt and added years of wear to the rifle. And so you have to be very, very, very careful on introducing artificial wear products in the name of making your bolt smoother. I would choose ammo first or a better rifle, save up for one, whatever. And I know bolt manipulation smoothness is a touchy subject. It's very important. Speed on stages, enjoyment while shooting, cheek weld and face movement and scopes, and like, I understand. I live that too. I know what you mean. Having like owned pretty much every rimfire rifle under the sun, and other than 700 stuff, I know what a good quality smooth bolt is like, and it has nothing to do with age. And a lot of times it has to do mostly with design and ammo choice. And like, I'm guilty of not guilty. I definitely planned and introduced artificial wear things to bolts. But I did so very carefully based on experience. And each one of those times I did get an improvement and I was satisfied. But it's not something that, like, I keep warning you because I really don't want you to do it. And everybody's had a Bubba rifle before, and that's Bubba 101. Do not introduce wear items to wear your bolt prematurely unless you have the experience to do so. So I will pause this one here, and I'll bring out my Anschutz bolt and show you guys, for those of you who don't know or don't realize how a bolt wears, and we can have kind of a closer look. So I'll pause this one here and check back. Okay, so I got this quickly set up here, and I apologize for the camera angle. And I've got a light over here because I want to try and highlight the bolt surface as best I can, but I might have to switch its color type so you guys can see. So don't be surprised if there's some kind of, you can see that there, some color choice options for this. We'll see. Okay, so on the bench here, couch, impromptu surface, you can see a couple of bolts here. So I have an older Mark II and just a random, 50s, I think, Mossberg 410 bolt action shotgun. to show you kind of construction differences. And then, of course, my Anschutz over here. So this Anschutz is dirty still from the last time I shot it. I don't remember how many rounds are on it, but I want to show you as best I can the, we'll focus. If we'll, give me a second, I'll see if I can. Okay, so you can see there the herringbone kind of tiger stripe pattern on the bolt, because the bolt is operated like, as I'd mentioned, you push it forward like this, exaggerated of course, and you pull back like this while manipulating it in a very kind of semi-arc pattern. And so you get a very unique wear pattern. And so if you were just to polish this back and forth with emery cloth or a buffing wheel or whatever, it's not the correct wear for this rifle. And so you would prematurely wear all those surfaces in between the actual worn surfaces. So it's important to think of that if you're going to polish it. Polishing it just on a wheel or whatever will not yield the results you want, because you're going to polish all the surfaces that aren't having proper contact. Also, you can see here the lockup on the bolt handle. This has locking lugs as well, but the surfaces are so nice. Very minimal wear. It's a properly head spaced and hand fitted bolt, and so you don't have wear. Like this rifle's from '99. You don't have wear where you shouldn't. You have wear where you should. Okay, so that's important to realize. You guys can see that pattern very distinctly. Your rifle will have that too. So then we'll take a Mark II bolt, and this is the hardened pin caulking surface I was talking about. This is all mild steel, and this is hardened steel. So over time, this hardened steel eats away, and you can see some galling right there. As time goes on, it'll reach the point of maybe where it won't set properly anymore, but it will get unreliable and janky. So then the bolt itself, you can see, because this design is different, you can see the different wear pattern on the bolt itself. It's very distinct, right? And so you can't polish this in the same way. A lot of people with these guys is they'll get in here with a 1500, 2000 grit sandpaper, and they'll sand this all. But the Savage Mark II is already very sloppy tolerances, and so if you reduce the surface even more, you put it in the receiver, it's like a hot dog in a hallway scenario, right? So you have to be very careful and follow the actual patterns. And in Mark II, this is, like I said, this is the biggest issue. It's right here. You can't grease these too much because you'll have light strikes, so it's really just the nature of its design. It's just the way it works. And then when you compare it to the Anschutz, you can not only see that the scoring is much more universal on this, but not as harsh as this. You can see there's bolt channel wear too from as it passing through the sloppy tolerances, and there's none or very minimal on the just blue wear, and there's scratches on this. And you can see where the factory played with the headspace there to get the headspace done properly. And you can see the wear over time. That's where your wear issue will be. And then the old Mossberg 410 bolt is almost the same as the Savage. Very similar design, no shock. They were kind of like intertwined for a bit there, Lakefield and Mossberg. But you can see the wear patterns are very similar. And like again, the point is like you just can't wear them in the same way, if that makes sense. You have to be careful how you proceed. I'll also add that, like, before you get into throwing lapping compounds and abrasive paste in there, consider a silicone bolt knob. You guys have seen these on a million of my different rifles, and it gives you a better purchase, more leverage, and so it feels better. It's the same as, changing out your bolt knob for a threaded tactical style, for instance, because it gives you more leverage and manipulation power for the bolt that otherwise might be stiff. So these make a big difference, and they're only like less than $10, and they last forever. I have some that I've used for years. And this one is just a press fit, slip fit, clean it really good, put it on, it doesn't move. Some do, and you got to put a kind of like a daub of silicone, automotive silicone underneath. I'm getting ahead of myself, but they're a worthwhile purchase. They're nice and tactile and grippy. I really like them, and I use them on most of my rifles. It gives you a little bit bigger purchase. So this particular generation of Anschutz doesn't have a threaded bolt handle. But if I didn't have these, I had never discovered these, I would, even though it's a beautiful rifle and a higher end, I would cut and thread this for my own. That's how much of a difference it makes for me. So anyway, that's all I want to say about that right there. And I'll stop this one here. Get back to the video. All right. So I hope that, oh my God, my camera angle is terrible. Oh, I hope that, yeah, good enough. I hope that kind of cleared up some misconceptions and some, I hope it stopped somebody from you know, aggressively over polishing a bolt, because really, don't do it. And hope my suggestions help you guys out, and you don't lose hope with your bolt. There are solutions. Try the ammo first. To recap, try the ammo first. Make sure you've broken it in properly and you're, you know, putting the trigger time. That's always fun. And then make sure that the rifle that you've chosen is indicative of a nice wearing rifle. If you unfortunately have a rifle that is supposed to be nice, hey, my buddy's 457 is great, and his buddy's 457 is much smoother than mine, and I have had mine and I've put enough ammo through it in different brands and it just sucks. Yeah, that was my experience with the 457 too. So if that happens, unless it's a real good shooter and you're willing to just put up with it for the sake of accuracy, I would move it on and go find another one. That's what I would do. There's not much you can do. You can try and buy another one and switch out the receivers and keep your barrel. That's always a possibility with a 457. You can do all sorts of things. Buy yourself a cheap synthetic model and switch it out and away you go. That might be a worthwhile thing if you have a really good shooting barrel, because I know some of those barrels are really nice. You know, my last MTR I had, which was a 16.5, was exactly that. I had chipped extractors and terrible bolt function, but it was a really accurate rifle. So ended up IBIing it and keeping that 16.5, and a friend of mine still shoots that barrel, and I used it in competition. You can probably remember with the 455 in its first iteration was a laser beam. And so out of all that rifle, it's been long sold and gone except for the barrel, because a good shooting barrel is hard to find, or should be kept. Anyway, I'm rambling now. So I want to thank you guys as always for watching. Any questions or comments, leave them below and do my best to answer them. I actually look forward to the feedback from you guys on this sort of thing, and what would you do to tackle a rough running rifle? I know we all have our little tips and tricks, and some of us just run them stock, and that's fine. I know, like, as I was saying this, I was saying to myself, well, it has a lot to do with lubrication, right? Like the lube you choose. And I know, like, I am a little bit picky with lube. I run Ballistol in all my rifles because it's food safe. And it's certainly not the best lubricant out there, but for me, I choose it for a host of different reasons, and I'm happy with it. And more my method of lubrication changes depending on the cold versus the warm season. I'm, you know, a little bit particular about it, but that's all I ever use in rifles is Ballistol. And I know some people have a whole technique and cleaning pattern and oiling pattern, and it's quite the system. So sometimes switching lubricant can yield you much smoother results, or no lubricant at all. And know people who've done that too, and we're pleased with the results. Just ran it dry. So food for thought for sure. So anyway, any questions or comments, leave them below, and do my best to answer them. Catch you at the next one.